Thanks so much for being here today, Kelly. Thanks for sharing your story and being willing to do this. And I was just wondering, would you be willing
Mhm.
to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Molly, for having me and letting me share my story. Yeah, so my name is Kelly Ritter, and my background is in clinical mental health. And I did that for a long time and then transitioned to nutritional therapy. So I specialize in mental health nutrition, and I'm an addict. So that's really interesting. It's been it's just it's been an interesting journey and continues to be an interesting journey trying to help other people while I'm also in attending to my own recovery, which is yeah.
Yeah, I hear there. I've been there.
Like, I don't
Yeah,
know
it's
what
like
else
wearing
to
all the
say
different,
about
right?
that.
Yeah, it's all the different hats. It's like, well, there's my professional hat, there's my personal hat, right? And there's this hat that we wear when we show up. And so it can be interesting trying to juggle all the things and figure all of that out. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what was life like before you started your recovery journey?
Yeah, so I thought it was pretty normal, actually, Molly. I was, like, not thinking I was an addict at all. Um, I mean, I was just very high functioning, type A, get her done, like, go, 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 person, not an overeater. So I didn't think of food as an addiction for me because I thought you needed to be an overeater, kind of in general. Never had binge eating or any of that kind of thing. So for me, when I quit drinking alcohol in 2016, didn't think I was an alcoholic either. Just felt like it was just in the way. And I'll tell you, for me, where I know I've crossed the line from a habit that's really just not very healthy to addiction is when I realize there's this feeling inside, and it can be literally anything for me. So it's not that surprising that sugar and dairy and some of the other foods ended up being a problem. But for me, it can be anything where I am at first, I look pretty normal, feels pretty normal, but then there's this kind of gnawing, it's never enough. Like one is too many and also never enough at the same time. I know I'm getting into a place where it's probably going to be a problem and I need to drop it. And in my life, looking back, there are things that I just dropped. I was like, oh, this doesn't feel very good. I'm dropping it. Um, so I guess that's why I also didn't think I was an addict. And what I found is that when I'm in that space where I know that this is a problem, I don't feel well, I can tell that it's a problem, even if I'm white knuckling it to like stay away from it, I kind of don't care. So for me, it's like I don't really want to stop. I have this little bit of I don't know what you call that, self-destructive.
Rebel, a little bit of a rebel.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Ah, shit. I know that I've stepped into addiction territory at that point." So my life was pretty, I thought I was moving along pretty well. I was about almost 4 years in to alcohol free when I started realizing I just moved my addictions. So, yeah, and I'm only 11 months in to sugar and what I would call food sober. I know that term is offensive to some people, but I love it. It feels really good to me. So,
Yeah, live your truth. I mean, if that's a word, a lot of people balk at
mhm,
abstinence or food sober
mhm,
or the fact that there even could be food addiction or sugar addiction, right? There are plenty of people out there who
right.
balk at that. But if that's your truth, that's your truth. And that's part of the reason why I want to talk to people like you and like others who've been willing to come forward because your truth
Mhm.
is just as valid as the next person's. And so I think really using those words, if they land for you and standing in that, reduces stigma for other people who are like, yeah, that feels right. Or, ooh, that's the word. That's the word I've been looking for this whole time. So I just really
Yeah.
appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, and I wanted to say it because and I also think it's important to say I don't think I looked like what you think an addict looks like. So for people who are questioning their own consumption of things and that kind of that gnawing of like it's too much and never enough at the same time, I wanted to put that out there. And for me, I don't feel sober. Like I didn't even use the word sober when I was alcohol free. I just quit drinking. Until I don't feel sober if I'm not food sober.
Yeah,
And
that
that
makes sense.
it's
Yeah,
been the hardest addiction. Food
sure.
addiction is I feel like alcohol was not easy, but of the things I've given up, it was not as hard as some of the food stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So thinking back, you said 11 months. So thinking back to the beginning of those 11 months and how difficult it must have been versus what it's like now. Can you kind of talk a bit about that transition? Like, what was the beginning like? And then how did
Yeah.
you like find it in you to keep that momentum, keep going? And what is it like now?
Like I'm gonna cry because I mean, Molly, my God, it was so hard. And I made the transition to nutritional therapist and then started realizing I had issues with the food. And when you realize you're in the food, you're like, how am I supposed to help other people find nutritional plans when I'm in this. And I reached out to you. I just looked back because I saw your question. I looked back in June 11th of last year. I reached out to you and said, I think I've got a problem and I need to figure out where to go and what to do. And about a month later, I reached out to you again and said, I've got to find my people because I was in She Recovers, which I think I found some beautiful people. But I had said the words food sober, that term, food sober, and got attacked for that in there. And so I reached out to you and you were so helpful. And I just needed to find community. I needed to find, and I have not found more resonance than in the sugar sober community. That's where I really have found my people. So yeah, it's super hard. And I don't even know. I think I was stopping for ice cream at 10 a.m. at a 7-Eleven down the street and was like, oh my God, like I can't even wait till after 5. I got to reach out to Molly and see if she can help me figure out what I'm going to do. Yeah. Yeah.
So then something happened. So you
Yeah.
something clicked,
Yeah.
something happened. What was the thing?
Um, I just I just knew so I was already coming to terms with the fact that I'm an addict and then just moved it. And I think what clicked is I mean, it felt like I was stopping to get my drugs at the 7-Eleven at 7. I might as well have been picking up a 12 pack, you know? It just felt the same to me that ice cream and it didn't matter that it was just ice cream. It's just ice cream. It was like I'm stopping to get my crack. Um, yeah, so I guess that just clicked for me that was not going to be sustainable.
Yeah. Okay. So then you get on this journey, and did you know right away, like what foods which foods you had to avoid, or was it a process? I mean, have you let go of other things as this has gone on?
I'm still in process
Yeah.
because I was already eating mostly carnivore. And so I already felt really good. So as I started adding things back, I started realizing that feeling. So chocolate, I already knew had become way past medicinal for me. So I already had kind of figured that out and was trying to manage that. But I knew that when you add sugar and fat together, it was a particular kind of combination. And then I also realized dairy, when I eat dairy, it feels like I just did a hit, like straight into a vein. It's very euphoric feeling, but then I don't feel very good pretty quickly, like sinusy. I don't feel very good, like my stomach doesn't feel so great. But I want more. And so then, you just realize like, oh, I've been doing that with things like Diet Coke back in the day. I finally quit that, but I had the same issue with like Diet Coke and caffeine that I had quit years ago, chocolate, all the things that, yeah. So I'm still figuring out what I can eat and what I can't eat.
And
And
do
I
you do
think
that?
that's what's tricky. I'm
No,
sorry about this.
absolutely. Oh
Like,
gosh, no, as
there's
long as that's not in
sun.
your eye. No, yeah, as long as
Like,
it's not in your eyes. But I think,
so
so it is tricky. Are you doing that alone? Do you do that with somebody who helps you? Do you do it with your community? Like how do you figure that out?
yeah. You know, I think it's really good to work with somebody. And I am learning how to do that because I've been a loner type person. Like when I quit drinking, I never went to any kind of AA. I didn't join She Recovers, nothing. I just quit. And I think I've still got that mentality of like, go it alone. I've got this. But I am realizing that abstinence is not the same as recovery, that I can be abstinent. And I think that's what I thought recovery was like, oh, if I'm not touching the substance, that's fine. But the longer you're in recovery, you realize like, then I just move it. Like I just move things. And if I'm not really doing the healing. So I'm working to open up with I have a great therapist, but she's not an addict. So that's wonderful. I think having a good therapist is helpful. I can contact Marla, our mutual friend Marla has been really fantastic for me. And I can check things out with her where I'm like, oh my gosh, I think, fruit is a problem. Like I don't know that I can do fruit. And she walks me through that. And it's like, oh yeah. Yeah. Um, but I need to probably do more in the community. Because
What
it's
is like, what do you imagine that means? Like just showing up more or like
yeah.
doing your part to back and forth or
Yeah, I think showing up more and also probably being more available for other people when people are reaching out to me. I have a really busy life, and I think that I just stay busy and stay in my own space. And I don't think that that's going to be sustainable long term in recovery.
do you find that the busy kind of becomes the next thing? I mean, is it the new outlet for whatever? And not that it necessarily is, but I know like for
Yeah,
me, it certainly can be. And that's why I was just wondering, like, do you think that that has occurred for you as well, or is it not quite
right. I
that
mean,
extreme?
anything could be, right? But I also know I feel the best. I'm also like super into human design and I'm a generator. And so I know that I feel best when I love my work and I work and do all the things and I fall into bed just very satisfied with the day. Um, but I also think that it probably could be some avoidance stuff because as long as I'm working, but I don't feel like it's as much avoidance right now. I think, I just have a family and work and
Yeah.
but
Again,
I do think that I imagine that to be showing up more.
right.
Showing up in meetings, talking more when you don't want to talk.
Yeah, right. Well, and like you said, you wear so many hats, and so it's just like you only have so much energy. There's only so much of you to go
Right.
around. Where does
Right.
it go? But it, like you said, you realize something. There was something about abstinence, and that it's different than recovery. So, what prompted that shift for you? Like, what was the light bulb or moment that you were like, oh, there's something more needed?
Yeah, I think showing up to meetings, listening to people, and really getting super honest about my own shit. Um, that has been the most interesting kind of journey is, because it's both surprising and not at all shocking. It's like shocking and not at all surprising at the same time. Like that, where you're like been sitting on this bomb forever. And yeah, but swallowing the truth of things has been challenging at times. And I think just getting super honest about being abstinent from alcohol, that's super. I feel great. I don't ever wake up hungover. That's a great feeling, but that's not necessarily recovery. I think listening to other people and hearing, years and years and years in recovery and realizing like this is not a couple years and we're done.
Right.
Right.
So you're hearing these stories, like you're realizing, okay, there's something more to this than just abstinence. So you start getting into now what would be what it sounds like you would call recovery. How did are you just that person that just perseveres? Like, you know, I can't imagine that just abstinence alone can be very fulfilling, though I can imagine it removes some of the problem, right? But
Right.
that there's it
Right.
kind of feels like there's something missing. So like, yeah, are you just that person that just perseveres and you just keep moving forward? Or how did you kind of know there was something more, and so you were always kind of seeking it? Like, how did you get to that point? Like, you kept showing up at meetings, and I'm imagining, like, myself going like, "Well, but why? What was driving you to those? What were you getting from those meetings?"
Well, I love your sugar sober group. That's my favorite group. And I do go to AA, like in person AA meetings, because there's one group I just love the old timers and I love being around, but it feels a little like cheating because not drinking's easy for me. Like, so, you know what I mean? But I feel the most resonance in the sugar sober groups. And so I think showing up and listening to stories and being like, oh, yeah, I could feel that. Even if it's not really like my story, it doesn't matter. There's a resonance. Like I really connect with what people are saying. And I do think I'm a perseverer. I think, life's hard, whatever, suck it up, put your big girl panties on. My mom used to say that all the time. And I've done a ton of work on myself. I'm a therapist, or, was a therapist that believed in getting good therapy. And so I had done all this work on myself. And I guess I thought that was going to be enough. I don't think I realized like that addiction was at the root of things. And so once I realized that addiction was really the root, then I started going, well, okay, how do we live now with, it's not just about not having sugar and not having, but now what? Like,
Yeah.
how do I live my life? How do I go to lunch with friends now? How do I vacation with the people that I've been vacationing with for 20 years? How do I live with a husband that eats and drinks? How do I, and that's where I was like, oh, I can't do this alone.
Yeah.
Like,
Those are really great questions,
yeah,
right? Just to, like, be asking yourself of,
yeah,
like, is this as good as it gets? Is this all that there is? Or, how do I show up and not feel like there's something missing or like a robot or something along those lines, right? Where it's just like,
right.
I need to, like, actually engage in life around me.
Yeah. And I think persevering was getting very tiring. I was just very tired of feeling so alone.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Mhm.
thinking about that, what is life like now in recovery? Like,
Mhm.
I imagine it goes from, like, being black and white to seeing in color. I don't know. Talk to us a bit about what that has been like to do that work, some of that work.
So there is a lot of freedom. Like it's very freeing to like learn, get real about these things and like you realize that the battle you've been in is against yourself, which is the hero journey. We all, Luke is entering the forest and realizes he's fighting himself, and you're like, of course, but it's different when it's happening. And so I think, I'm in it. I don't know. I do one day at a time, sometimes one breath at a time. I have all the emotions and don't numb them right now. like not currently in this moment numbing them, which is really hard. Um, I find still, and I don't know. You all were talking about the pink cloud at some point, and I was like, "What pink cloud? Where's the pink cloud?" Now I really get it. There is that when you're new and you're feeling so much better and you're clearer, you're more present in your life, but then as the months and years go by, like you still have to live your life on life's terms. And I think that's where I am I'm navigating that right now, and there are days that I'm feel really strong and really free and really good, and then there are moments where I feel like this is horrible, this is too hard, like, this is bullshit. I don't wanna do any of it, and it's like, "W what, you don't wanna do life? Like, I don't wanna die." So but I get it when people are like, "I'm done. I just don't wanna." But it doesn't feel like a fight, I will say that. Whereas I felt like I was really, persevering and kind of didn't know that I could feel this good. I just didn't know. Does that
Yeah,
make
there's,
sense?
like, absolutely, it's like there's some kind of release. Like, I think back to, my days before starting this journey. And I just remember it was like slogging through, right? And then the food was like the thing that like brought me back to life or, whatever. It gave me meaning because I was just so miserable. I was stuck in a cycle that I had no idea I was stuck in. And now, like you said, it's not like it's all, sunshine and rainbows and unicorn poop. Like life is still
Yeah.
life. But I think it's like you you can show up in a totally different way and be like, "Oh, yeah, okay, like, this is a challenge or a new adventure," or whatever it might be. It's not always easy, it's not always fun,
Yeah.
but it feels different, you're right, like, before it felt like I was dragging myself through life, and now it's more like, "Oh, what is tomorrow gonna bring, or what is today gonna," like, "What fresh hell is," sometimes days are like that, but
You know?
I can laugh about it today where
Yeah.
5 years ago, I would have been breaking down and, with anxiety. Like, I used to hate going to bed at night knowing that my day would reset as soon as I went to sleep, and when I woke up in the morning, it was going to be misery again. Where now it's like, "Eh, it might be, but most likely it's not going to be, but at least I can see
Yeah.
that now." So, yeah, you make total sense to me. So
To you.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely I'm following what you're saying there. So what kinds of things do you do on the daily for your recovery? Do you have a routine? Are there certain like no matter what's that have to happen? Like what does a
Yeah.
day look like for you?
Yeah. So no matter what, I see the sunrise. I don't care what the weather is, where I am, what city I'm in, how tired I am. I get up and see the sunrise. It's now part of who I am, and it doesn't have anything to do with food, and it has everything to do with my day. So, how my day is going to go. I'm really, I'm super geeked out about all the quantum techniques of healing, and so I incorporate a lot of that where I'm outside barefoot. I take breaks outside all the time. I have to have my food around. So I've kind of always been that way because I've had so many food sensitivities and allergy stuff. So I've always, when we would pack to go anywhere, half of my suitcase is my food. So that's not really new. It's just now it's like the food that's safe for me. I have to have that on hand every single day because I don't know. I just do. That's part of what I do to make sure that I feel like I have everything that I need. Like I don't have to worry about that. And I do like so every day is really about, I start the day with a steak, period, the end. I might have some other stuff, but if I don't start the day with the steak, I don't feel right. That's just how I that's just how I roll. And there are people that are like, "Well, is that now an addiction?" I don't know. It doesn't feel like it because I don't get to the end and be like, "I need more," like that feeling of gnawing. I just feel really good, really satisfied, and ready to start my day. So that's kind of I try to go to it's not a daily though, but I am going to more meetings, and I think that that's important. Um, and then I see my therapist not weekly, but close to weekly, like 2 or 3 times a month, and I just feel like that's super important for me.
Do you have any sort of like meditation or
Yeah.
spiritual practice? Yeah, what
Yeah.
kinds yeah, talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a prayer. Um, Not super religious, but definitely I'm meditate and pray a lot. All day, little bits, like I'm a big believer in one conscious breath in and out is a meditation. It doesn't have to be an hour long, in a quiet place. So for me, um, I feel like I'm always in conversation with higher power, whatever God, life, life force energy, whatever that is. And I mean, constantly asking for support, even to the point where sometimes it's a little embarrassing. It's like you're not in Ukraine, right? So do you need to be asking for this much help constantly? And I'm like, well, I think there's enough help for everyone that needs it. So yeah. And I also like I have rituals with food. So I cook a lot. I love to
Mm,
cook for people.
mhm.
And I'm lucky that I think lucky that I still get to do that and don't want to eat it. Like, I love that people are healthy and feel good eating healthy, good food. And so I have a lot of rituals around that too.
Mhm. Yeah. So when you say like you cook things that you're not necessarily eating, do you mean just because like you're mostly carnivore, so it's going to be like vegetable dishes or whatever it might be? Okay.
Yeah, or dairy,
Oh,
everybody
sure.
else in the house can eat dairy. So
Mhm.
sad. Um, and I should mention that, like, if there's a morning, like, genuinely sad about chocolate and dairy, and I've tried goat, I've tried, you know, local raw. I mean, it's the same. It feels like a hit of a drug. My brain lights up like, "Yeah, let's get more of that," but I feel terrible.
Yeah. I mean, God love you for trying, right?
I
Is the
know,
way I
right?
say, like, at least you tried, but that you also said, like, that's just I feel the same way about a lot of things too. I think in the beginning I looked for a lot of substitutes for things like
Oh, yeah.
pizza or something, right? So it'd be like
Yeah.
fathead dough or cauliflower crust or all these things. And I just like,
Oh, yeah.
there is never going to be a thing that because I'm looking for the bread, right? I'm looking for the hit. So there's
I know.
never going to be the thing.
Right.
So it's like not even worth it anymore.
Right. I
But
know.
we try.
There's no substitute for a Cheez-It.
No.
Like, it just there's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Everybody's like, eat Parmesan wisps. And I'm like,
I tried that.
this is not
Mm-mm.
even the same. Not the
I know.
same.
We all do, though. I think
Yeah.
that's important too, and I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm really okay with people trying like, you are where you are in your journey, and, like, people that don't get that they're in the food yet, and they are clearly addicts of other things, but they're using food. I mean, of course, that's how I went when I couldn't drink. I ate my way through, things that were uncomfortable. Like, of course, that makes sense. So you wake up when you wake up and you try things and you try substitutes and realize that that's at the end of the day, you just have to do what's really healthy for your own body.
Right. Yeah. Show up and just ask, like, what do I need? What's helpful, healthy for me? What's right for me in this moment? Yeah.
And I really started, especially lately, I've really gotten into understanding allergies too, and these histamine reactions that a lot of people are now having after having COVID and whatnot. But there's a difference for me now between what's safe and what I might call healthy. So it might not actually be a gut healing kind of food, but if it's safe for you, you go on and you have that. Like, I'm big on what's safe for you.
Yep. Exactly. Because it's
Yeah.
going to be different, and we can let go of some of that dogma too, right? Like, oh, I work with lots of clients who try to be keto because keto, in a lot of ways, right,
Yes.
eliminates those things. But then they get stuck on that and they eliminate a lot of things, and now they feel over restricted. And so sometimes we just say, like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Mhm.
like your data over all the dogma. Even yes, I show up and I have dogma, like folks, like we all do. But it all comes down to you as an individual, what works for you. Dairy doesn't work for you, so you avoid it. Like whatever, those things don't work for you, but it doesn't mean that we have to put a label on it. It doesn't mean that just because it works for you or doesn't work for you, it does or doesn't work for me. And so I really appreciate that you have this willingness to check that out, but also like you give that to other people too, that space to other
Yeah.
people. Like just
Yeah.
check it out, and do it with support.
Yeah. And it's going to be okay if you find that it really doesn't work for you and you're not ready to give it up. I've been there, done that. I know that feeling too. Um, you probably don't know that with boyfriends because you married your high school sweetheart, but most of us can remember a time when we were really loved somebody, but we knew it was over. And I found the same with food. Like, I love it. I know it's over, but sometimes I play with it. I found before 11 months ago, I would play with it anyway.
Oh yeah. Sometimes we just have to go back to get a little more information. Yeah, right. Dang it, anyhow.
Yes.
So what did thinking about, 11 months ago, maybe even longer ago, maybe more recently, what did you need to hear when you were first starting or at some point in this journey that like, what did you need to hear that would have
Mhm.
or did give you the courage, the strength, the will or want to pursue this?
Yeah. Well, you actually helped me because I reached out to you first. I mean, you were really the only person I knew in the food, addiction space at that time. Isn't that strange? I know, because I mean, I'm in mental health, but I'm in the wellness space, and I feel like there's not a lot of people that really understand addiction, much less food addiction, or even think it's a thing. So for me, what was really helpful is to see that to acknowledge that food addiction is a thing. Like that was really important for me. Um, and just having, you know, people understand food sober, like what that meant, what that means. And then when I started going to the group, it was just really helpful for me to hear other people's stories of, well, relapse too, and how people circle in it, you know, like it was humbling to hear all of all of the people's stories, and that this is truly a journey of trial and error, and there are different seasons of our lives where different things are okay or not okay for us. But I think just having the acknowledgement that food addiction is a thing, it's real. I wasn't, yeah. And I also, I don't know that I heard this though, but I felt like the fact that I'm a professional was okay. I'm professional and struggling, that it was okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is like we are all just human beings anyway. Also, right? Like it's at the end
Right.
of the day,
Yeah.
we're human beings. We have our stuff,
Right.
and I mean, as well as probably many people listening to it, like, yeah, I was a mental health and addiction counselor since 2005, and it wasn't until 5 years ago, 2017, that I was like I read Vera's book, and I'm like, oh, this might be a
Right.
thing. Why has that never occurred to me before? You know,
Right.
at all. And partly I
Yeah.
think it was just because I was in the criminal justice world. So it wasn't right. Like we were worried about methamphetamine and opiates, right?
Right.
And babies getting back with parents and getting out of the correctional system. We weren't worried about food.
Right.
But yeah, once
Right.
you slow it down and we really start thinking about it, it's like, oh, it makes so
Mhm.
much sense. And to, like you said, to just have it validated that this is real, like this is the thing. It changes a person.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that, just realizing you can feel it. And I can't necessarily describe it, but I can feel how it changes my brain. And, when you recognize that, you're like, wow, that's really powerful. Like that food can do that. Um, yeah. So yeah.
Well, I know that I've taken up quite a bit of your time, but before I let you go, is there anything that I didn't ask that maybe you would like for folks to hear or know?
Um, No, nothing that you didn't ask. I think it's all I'm just trying to think if there's anything that I just wanted to say
Yeah.
about that y- you're not alone. If you start to feel like maybe this is an issue for me or maybe I'll check it out, you can do that without you don't have to commit to being like, oh, I'm a food addict and I can only go to groups and I can only if I'm a food addict, you don't have to you can explore and check things out and get support while you're figuring it out because it is a journey. And I think it is important to find people that are supportive, that get when you and I will say when I first started going to the group and I would speak, it does feel strange. And you'll be talking and not looking, so you might miss that people put hearts up or clapping, and in the end, you finish talking and you're like, "Nobody hearted that. Nobody clapped. I probably shouldn't have talked. I probably oh, that was probably" that is normal. People probably did heart in the middle of what you were saying. So go back, and when you feel like you don't wanna talk, that's usually the time to talk. And it's a really I mean, your group in particular, but I think that the crowd in general in the food addiction space is very loving, open, forgiving. There isn't one way. Everybody does their their recovery in a little bit different way, so that's kind of cool. And if you go and you feel weird, that's normal.
Oh, thank you so much for
Is
that. I
that
think that, yeah, no, I think that's really important for people to hear. That isn't even something that I would have ever thought to share with people, but you're right. You're right about all of that when you're sharing and just like
yeah.
the adrenaline's going and you're just
Mhm.
trying to get through without passing out. Yeah, you're missing that and then it can be that whole like the anxiety telling me I shouldn't have shared. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a big believer in the power of the group and that everything that happens in group is supposed to happen in group, right? Like when we think about higher power, to me, the group is so much bigger than any one person there. So everything is supposed to happen the way it happens because somebody needed to hear what you had to share that day.
Yeah, I 100%. I've always been a big fan of running groups
Yeah,
and being the group leader
right.
and like the power of groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so to just really be a participant
Mm-hmm.
is important and is a different kind of experience. And I 100% agree with you. Like there's something very powerful about a group
Yeah,
that just is just different.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
Well, thank you again so much for being
thank
here. I
you.
appreciate you giving the time and your
Yeah.
story and being vulnerable so that others, your recovery out loud so that others don't have to suffer in silence. And
Mhm.
it's priceless. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and my stomach will quit shaking any minute now. Yeah, no, I really appreciate you letting me share.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kelly.
Molly.